Hi, I'm Utah County Sheriff Mike Smith. Today we're going to talk about our Support Services Division and what they did in 2020. So before we start, I want to talk about what Support Services is. So within the Support Service Division, we have our emergency services, our emergency management, our judicial, which is our courts, and our wildfire. So starting with emergency services. Within emergency services, our search and rescue saw quite a bit of an increase in calls for service. A couple of the calls that I'll highlight that were traumatic calls for our divisions and for our community is we had the drowning of 2 victims in Utah Lake in 2020, and we also had an airplane crash in American Fork Canyon that left 4 people deceased. One of the things I want to highlight with our volunteer base that we deal with is we had 12,000 hours of volunteer hours that were donated. And I'll say to the sheriff's office, but really they were donated to you, that were donated to the community of Utah County to help us to provide those rescue efforts to each and every one of you. In emergency management, we saw, because of COVID, in March 9th of 2020, we put into operation our Emergency Operations Center, and that center is still in operation to this very day. During that time, that Emergency Operations Center was involved in many different aspects of the pandemic, including preparing and distributing PPE to different parts of our community. In fact, there was over $2 million worth of PPE that went through that Emergency Operations Center. One thing that you may not think about is, in 2020 we had a major election, and because of the pandemic we weren't able to offer voting the way that we were used to. So our Emergency Operations Center actually helped set up 4 drive-through voting locations that made it possible for each and every one of us to get out and have our voice heard during the election. In our courts were kind of a different thing. Because of COVID, we actually saw our courts go down 66% in patrons, which is interesting. So if you look at 2019, we had around 300,000 people go through the doors of our courtrooms. In 2021, we saw about 100,000 people go through the doors. So we saw that decrease in patrons coming through, but the worst part of that is as we come out of COVID, we expect to see a massive increase as we try to get back on track. In our wildfire division, I want to explain that we have 2 parts of it. We sent actually crews out to 7 different states in 2020 to help with their wildfires, and I want to talk about that for a minute on why we do that. Some of you may remember back in 2018, in fact, I remember it vividly because I had been a sheriff just for a couple weeks, and the south part of our county was on fire. And we actually evacuated 2 complete cities in the south part of the county. So when we talk about why do we send people out of state, here's why. When those fires hit the south part of our county, we didn't have the resources or the capabilities to take care of that ourselves. But our neighbors came to our aid. They came to rescue us. They came to be there for us. And that's how we saved those cities. We saw some major destruction throughout our nation this year, and I'm proud to say that as a good community neighbor, we were able to be there to help those other communities. Within our own county this year, we actually saw 6 major wildfires, and each and every one of them had potential for grave danger. And one in particular we saw in our Provo Canyon area. In fact, I was up on that one. I was working on, I'll correct, I was not working on that one. I was there. The firefighters were working on that one. And as always, I'm amazed with what they do. A lot of people probably don't understand that fire came dangerously close to taking the Sundance community. It was coming up to an area that if it got to it, we would not have been able to save it. And due to the efforts of our firefighters and also all of the firefighters who came from other states and communities, we were able to protect that area. So that's our support service division. And I want to remind you, that's just one division of the Sheriff's Office, and we're going to be back to talk about the rest. So thank you.